Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Minister, thank you, Angela, and I'd also like to acknowledge the distinguished guests and the other speakers here today. Start with a big, heartfelt thank you to UN Women Australia for the invitation to speak today. It's an absolute honor to speak alongside so many incredible women. I feel very humbled and I'm slightly terrified. So my name is Kristen Rose. I lead the Future Industries team at CSIRO, the National Science Agency. And thank you, Jerry, for the amazing welcome to country this morning. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands we're meeting on, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I also want to acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women joining us today, and the respect given to them in traditional Aboriginal cultures as life givers. Traditionally, Aboriginal women play significant economic, religious, and political roles, and decision-making power is determined based on the place or the situation rather than the gender, which I think sounds pretty good. It never ceases to amaze me how much we can learn from Aboriginal culture, but as the longest continuous living culture on the planet, it should be no surprise. It comes down to empowerment and valuing difference, two key themes we've heard a lot about today and we're discussing as part of International Women's Day. Break the Bias asks us to imagine a world in which difference is valued and celebrated. And probably not surprisingly, the thing that resonates the most to me about that idea is the link to science and innovation. As the National Science Agency, we know that it's our differences that spark the best questions, and the best questions create the best science. The same men in blue suits who created the past are highly unlikely to create a better future. We need diversity of thought, perspective, and experience to come up with the solutions to our greatest challenges, like the monumental challenge of climate change. I see science as a tremendous opportunity for the empowerment of women and girls in the context of climate change, especially as its impacts have a disproportionately negative effect on them for a variety of reasons. But I also want to throw another word into the mix today, intersectionality. The idea that there are many aspects to identity and they can all impact equality. Factors like ethnicity or sexuality, socioeconomic background, age, religious beliefs, these all overlap with gender to create layers of bias. So when we champion difference, we need to look deeper than gender alone to empower female voices of all backgrounds and beliefs, because they are not all heard equally in our society, but they all have unique and valuable contributions to make on our journey to mitigate climate change. So with that context, let me set the scene a little here. As with any scientific process, we start by defining the problem before we move on to the hypothesis. The statistics have been covered by others today, although I'm still reeling from 135 years and a 22% gender pay gap. But I'll skip to the summary. Climate change is disproportionately affecting women and girls and exacerbating barriers to their empowerment through education. And we need those women and girls. Countries with female political leadership adopt more stringent climate change policies, resulting in lower emissions. We need women leaders in national parliaments to act more strongly to mitigate climate change, and we need their contributions to science and innovation. Empowerment through education and particularly in STEM subjects, is a mighty tool for women and girls. And we need to take dedicated action to make sure that opportunity is available to our girls dealing with those layers of challenges. Again, that idea of intersectionality. And I'll come back in a minute to what CSIRO is doing. But critically, I want to stress here that you don't need to be a scientist or an engineer to work in STEM. I am neither. Or to contribute to climate change. There is a limitless number of skills needed to support this, and we all have something to contribute, no matter your interests or skills. I'm proof of this, and there is a little story behind this. I remember it very, very clearly. I was sitting around my kitchen table with my mother's group. I'd moved to Australia after a career in strategy consulting and technology, and I'd taken a career break to have my kids. So we were there, literally, babies on knees, and I launched into one of my monologues about what I'm passionate about, issues of climate change, sustainability, and energy transition. My friends stopped me after listening patiently for a little while and said, in the nicest possible way, stop lecturing us and find someone to pay you to do this for a job. And it was a bit of a wake-up call for me. I had a genuine career epiphany. This is what I care about more than anything. So I went through a process of thinking about what needed to be done to address this monumental challenge of climate change. What skills did I have, and how could I marry those two things up? After that, I started my own business, working in sustainability, and I built the second chapter of my career around that. And that's why I'm at CSIRO, leading the sustainable development of the future industries that will secure Australia's prosperity and environmental resilience. And I genuinely have those mums to thank for the push. So we've defined the opportunity and the problem, and we're coming now to the hypothesis, which is this. Diversity is the compass to navigate innovation and to solve our greatest challenges. We've been testing this idea for many years already at CSIRO and working hard to get more women into leadership positions. Today, I'm very proud that we have gender balance at board and executive team level, and women in leadership at all levels across CSIRO is sitting just under 40%, which is just a little bit shy of our overall gender diversity at 42%. We have more work to do to lift diversity within our science leadership teams and to lift diversity in every dimension across the organization. But the progress we've made has had a real and measurable impact. As scientists, we like to measure things. It's no coincidence that our business performance, revenue growth, impact delivery, and public trust have all grown along with our diversity. It's our diversity that's driving innovation. One of the things we're working on is attracting more women into research roles, which today are male-dominated at CSIRO, with only 34% filled by women. This is a trend reflected in the broader STEM sector, and part of this issue goes back to the women role models we show our girls. Dr. Kathy Foley, Australia's chief scientist and an amazing role model for myself as well, tells a fantastic story about this, about Kylie Minogue's character on Neighbours in the mid-1980s. I know many of you won't remember that, but she became a motor mechanic on the show. And the corresponding spike in women enrolling in related TAFE courses was remarkable. This was probably a short-lived trend, but it does make a point. When we show girls someone relatable who they can aspire to be like, someone in whose footsteps they can follow, they can more easily imagine a future in that role. There are so many incredible women leaders at CSIRO making a difference on climate every day. From working on the health and sustainability of our oceans and the Great Barrier Reef, to innovating in energy, biodiversity, drought-resilient agriculture, and the list goes on. I can't mention them all, but I can tell a story about one of our students, which also speaks to that issue of intersectionality and the enormous amount we have to learn from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture. Hannah McCleary is a proud Palawa woman from Nipaluna country in Hobart. She completed a CSIRO Aboriginal Summer School for Science in year 10 and is now studying a combined Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Law degree at University of Tasmania. She was inspired by others who understood her experience as a young Aboriginal person interested in STEM. And now, as part of her cadetship with CSIRO, she wants to inspire other young Indigenous women to study science. She's on the committee that manages the CSIRO Indigenous Time at Sea Scholarship, which gives Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander university students the opportunity to join a research voyage on CSIRO's RV Investigator vessel, which some of you may have seen if you've been to Hobart. As a student, that's the type of experience you never forget, the type of experience that can set you on a path. When young Indigenous women see Hannah, they see themselves and they see footsteps they can follow. The impact of that is incredibly powerful on everyone, but particularly for girls and for the elevation of Indigenous-led science, which is something we're working hard on at CSIRO. As you've heard from my story and from Hannah's story, there are so many ways that you can bring your skills and your leadership to both equality and climate change. At the National Science Agency, we work from the impossibly micro to the massively macro, from microorganisms in soil and marine ecosystems right up to large-scale longitudinal climate data modeling. There are so many ways you can apply your skills, and we need every single bit of that. We need everyone, all genders, all backgrounds, all races, working together on this problem. It's the ultimate test of that hypothesis I shared earlier. But when we do it, I firmly believe it will be our differences that lead us to the innovations and solutions we need. I'll leave you here with the words of the Year 10 students who recently participated in the CSIRO Young Indigenous Women's STEM Academy. They're an inspiring group of girls following in Hannah's footsteps and leaving more behind them to follow. Their final message to the other young women was, be brave, ask for help, reach for the stars, you are deadly. So with that, I'll leave you. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you.